Good morning, Penn State fans. It's BWI Live, Wednesday, November 5th. That's Thomas Frank Carr. I am Greg Pickle from BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Penn State, fresh off a loss at number 1 Ohio State, now getting ready to host number 2 Indiana at Beaver Stadium. The first college football playoff rankings came out on Tuesday night from the CFP Selection Committee. T. Frank, something we expected to have to talk about at the start of this show if we were planning it back in, August or even September.
Yeah.
And now it's an afterthought, only beyond the fact that Penn State had to go to the number 1 team in the country, and now it turns around a week later and hosts the number 2 team in the country.
Yeah, and it made it so that not having Disney or ESPN on my YouTube TV did not matter whatsoever. It wasn't relevant to me whatsoever, so it was great. I didn't even notice.
Yes, so the new CFP rankings are out. Plenty of content about that over at on3.com. Obviously, Penn State is barely in the bowl conversation at this point, certainly not in the college football playoff conversation at this point. And there's still a lot to talk about, though, with this team with 4 games to go. You heard from the guys yesterday recapping Terry Smith's first news conference of Indiana week, and Curt Cignetti talked to kick off Indiana week as well. T. Frank, before we get into what he had to say, and it does have some impact potentially on this weekend's game, I think you, over on the Lions Den message board, put together a really compelling look at this Indiana team. I had some time to watch them yesterday as well. It's a problem for Penn State. It was going to be a problem facing this Indiana team at any point this year, and now with the way things have gone, certainly not the team you want to face amid a 5-game losing streak.
Yeah, I've been curious about Indiana for a while. I haven't really watched their game film. I did watch Indiana, Iowa earlier this year, but I really just watched the offense. And I got a sense of, I think they had a good offensive line, but I hadn't watched the defense. And the defense kind of opened my eyes, watching what they did against Oregon, watching them against Illinois, some, good and great Big Ten teams. And I was not expecting to see Manny Diaz reincarnated in Curt Cignetti. Like, you watch that style of defense, and it is like, the way I phrase it, it's like watching popcorn popping. It's everywhere. It's frenetic, chaotic movement, except for in this situation, it's intentional. Like, and it's all going to a specific place. So it's fun to watch. Like, from a diagnostic standpoint, it's fun to just be able to watch that and see kind of the ideas they have play out, especially when they're done well, because they are so aggressive and they are so interesting and different than what you normally see from other programs and other teams. And it's going to be a tough test. It's going to be a tough test for everybody on offense. I think that there's some things they'll do. We'll get into that later in the show, but I have less optimism about this game and Penn State's offensive chances than I did last week against some more conventional defense in Ohio State, where if you could get there, you knew where the openings were going to be, but Penn State obviously did not trust their quarterback to go get those openings.
Right, and you've talked about that a good bit over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, where it's just $1 to sign up for the first week. You can get all the coaching search intel, all of T. Frank's insight and intel from last week's loss to Ohio State and looking ahead this week to Indiana, recruiting updates, and more at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Yeah, I'm with you. That was my initial takeaway yesterday. I kind of did grimace almost as the more I watched, the more I thought about Penn State and this matchup and the fact that, to your point, I didn't feel like Penn State was going to be an offensive juggernaut against Ohio State, but the best bet segments from last week where we took both teams to score 10 or more points. Like, a lot of people were predicting Penn State to get shut out, and they didn't score a ton of points, but we knew that they were able to crack the code, so to speak. And I'm not necessarily as confident that the code will be cracked this week. Now, maybe there is the reincarnation of the new introduction of a new group of starting receivers. We can talk about that more later as well. Maybe Penn State does some things with Ethan Grunkmeyer that is not done during his first 2 starts in very 2 brutal road environments. But, I mean, otherwise, T. Frank, I don't want to get the end of the show conversation in the beginning, but tough task on hand for Penn State this weekend, and even more so if Aiden Fisher is able to play. All-American linebacker for Indiana, did not play last week, was hurt. They sound pretty optimistic he's going to be a go this week. We won't find out for sure until Saturday, but just another key to the cog of this Indiana machine, T. Frank, that is rolling along to start the season.
Yeah, and I think he's a big part. It's funny, he's a big part of what they do, and then they go win 50-66 or whatever it was against Maryland. So, this is a defense that is more than the sum of its parts. It is what I think Penn State fans hope that Penn State's defense is on a yearly basis, and specifically this year when there were some deficiencies up front, the defensive tackle position. Indiana has less talent athletically than Penn State does by far. But the way they're playing, the confidence, the violence, the activity of everything they're doing is accentuating what those players do well. And it's interesting that you can pull out what I think is the best player in the front seven and you still have a dominant performance because it's not about the player, it's about the scheme. And it's that way on offense as well. They have some really good players. I think they got some maybe better, higher-level players on offense, but it is about the scheme and it's about what they do. The way I've been trying to think of it is like it's the FCS on steroids. It's all the things in the margin that you need to do to be good at football if you don't have height, weight, and speed. And they are bringing more height, weight, and speed to that plan, and the results are number 2 in the country and dominating opponents.
Yeah, I think that's been the most impressive thing to me. This is the offense that scores points, and it has a guy in the quarterback who could be considered among the Heisman Trophy favorites. I don't think he's going to win the Heisman Trophy, but certainly his team's performance and his performance, he's number 2 in passing touchdowns in the country. Certainly warrants him being in that conversation. But yeah, they do a little bit of everything very well, and it makes a very tough task for Penn State on Saturday. Speaking of the Nittany Lions, it is Wednesday. This is BWI Live on November 5th. That's Thomas Frank Carr. I'm Greg Pickle, and if you're a familiar watcher of this Wednesday edition of BWI Live, we usually start the show with some random thoughts, odds and ends, things we were supposed to talk about later in the show that we decided to talk about first, and then we get into the Penn State practice preview, which is Nittany Lions will be back on the field tonight.
You gotta win, goddamn Tyler. You gotta win. To the corner.
So Penn State will welcome reporters to the practice fields between the Lash Building and Holuba Hall, or maybe they'll be inside tonight. It might be cold. I'm not 100% sure what the weather situation is.
Yeah, that's actually something I'm curious about. Yeah. That kind of gets into it. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but keep going.
No, I was just going to say we'll see if they're inside or outside. But either way, we will have complete coverage tonight at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com from both practice and also Terry Smith's second news conference of Indiana Week. T. Frank, I don't want to get the chat riled up, or you for that matter, but I'll do it anyway. What are you going to do first? Are you going to go look at Penn State's offensive line combination, or are you going to go look and see what the receiver situation is like tonight?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to change at receiver because those guys have been working with the top unit this whole time anyway.
Right.
And they've been just like, I don't think it matters who goes through the line first necessarily. Right. Because we've seen Trevor Pena go last when he first got here, and then he's, one of the top target getters. We've had Liam Clifford go first because he's senior leader and he sets the tone and does it the right way, and then he doesn't play in games. So like those things don't necessarily matter through the individual skill position drills. It does matter when they get to the passing drills, and they have been shielding those from us for a while now, or at least I should say last week. And that to me is the conversation about whether they're inside or outside. Is last week they did their best to put up a fence of bodies in front of their passing attack. It's harder to do that outside. Right. So it'll tell me a couple of different things. Are they still trying to work on and installing parts of the passing game? Because that's what they were trying to not show us last week. They used some of those concepts and they worked, and then they didn't work. Like it was the third down play where they were using basically a downfield screen for Devontae Ross to get him open for a conversion.
You were lucky enough to see that early in the week before you saw it later in the week? Good man.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. They are practicing things in full view, or they have been, because they need to. Because if you're installing stuff, you need to go through the whole thing. You don't have time to waste 10 minutes of kabuki theater with us there, and then, after we leave, then you can actually get into it. Terry Smith has rearranged practice, and I think he's prioritizing the most important things first. And if we're in there early in practice, there's got to be some sort of compromise for them, which again is why I try to respect what they're doing and not say any of these things during the week, because that is again, that's saving the gazelle from the cheetah, and you shouldn't be interfering in the process. I don't think that everyone really understands that, especially if you know there are people there that are just like need to get clicks on the social media. They don't necessarily understand what they're doing, so I understand why they're like, we need to make sure you guys don't get a clear view of all these things to put it out there. So yeah, I'm wondering if they're going to be inside for that reason alone, or if they're going to do something similar and try to obscure where they're doing the install. So to me, that's my interest, is like, I would like to see these things because then I get a better sense of what they're working on during the week. And that was new stuff last week. So are they still doing new stuff? And then the other thing is like, is the Jackson Smolik charade still alive? Because he was out last week. We saw Liam Clifford as the Wildcat quarterback. Is there anything left?
Terry Smith, they have a new word for that.
Wild lion.
Yeah, something like that.
No, lion cat is what they called it.
That's what it was.
Ooh, that made me cringe. That wasn't a good. That was not a good iteration. Wild lion sounds a little bit better. Also sounds like something from like an 80s hair metal band.
Yes. Yes, it certainly does. Yeah, so I would be curious to see, you're right about Jackson Smolik, what his situation is. Remember, folks, he did not travel to Ohio State. Terry Smith spent the better part of last week mentioning that, he didn't have an update on Jackson Smolik coming out of the bye week, which is when he also said he didn't have an update on Jackson Smolik. So we'll see how that all plays out. But certainly seems, T. Frank, like, at least for a little while, I guess maybe it could get better by the end of the season with 4 weeks to go. But at least for a little while, I think you're looking at a situation where it's Beckham Kritza behind Ethan Grunkmeyer, and then Liam Clifford can be there in an emergency situation. You have walk-on Jack Lambert as well, and that might be about it for this quarterback room right now.
Yeah, and I don't want to do the wild, rampant speculation sort of thing. Because it's not fair, right? And these things can be totally different. But I did break both of my hands before football season my senior year, and I did play that year. And I had to play with like wraps on both of my hands at tight end, but I was able to play. Now that, if I remember correctly, I had to have surgery, so it was very different. But like it was 6 to 8 weeks. I know they have 6 to 8 weeks. I also am speculating about something that happened in 2007 and not something that happened to somebody else completely in 2025. So like there's obviously a difference, but I'm just trying to like map the timeline on if he could get out of the cast he's in, maybe you get it a week, in the final regular season. But I don't think that there's a healed situation there, because usually we all know what a cast means, right? Like let's not be, too naive. Wherever that is, whatever the broken bone is in his hand, wrist, elbow, whatever it might be, or, in his forearm, I think it's unlikely. I just think it's unlikely given like what were the context clues we have here.
Right. No, I'm right there with you 100%. So we'll see. Ethan Grunkmeyer staying healthy, obviously a massive part of Penn State's push toward finally ending this 5-game losing streak, be it this week against Indiana. Some conversation in the chat. Yeah, so the line as I logged on here for the show this morning was Indiana minus 14.5 at BetMGM. It was low. I thought it was low. I was following this on Sunday when the line came out around 3 o'clock, and I was initially concerned that I may have consumed a few more beers than I thought I had, because I looked and I thought, that can't be right, but it was. But I just, that seems low to me, T. Frank, after what we saw last week, after what we've seen this Indiana team do. I know they're dealing with some injuries at this point in time, but also it just seems like they are, from top to bottom, at least 17 points better than Penn State, home, away, or otherwise.
So, wait, it's a 17-point spread in this game?
It's 14.5.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah, no, definitely. That's surprising. That is surprising.
Yeah, it's almost so surprising, and we'll talk about it more in Best Bets, but it's one of those lines that's so surprising that it makes you think, what are they doing? Like they're begging you to take Indiana, and why is that the case? And we'll talk about that more in Best Bets, but yeah, it just seems a little bit low. So in terms of some other things at practice, I'm assuming you guys will have an eye out for Drew Shelton. He did leave late in the Ohio State-Penn State game, but no indication anything long-term is up with him, so time will tell on that front, but should be fine. Did you like the move of Donko back to right tackle, and do you think that's sustainable for Penn State moving forward?
Yes, I did like the move back to Donko. I don't think it's going to fix some of the problems because the problems now are confidence for the entire group up front. And Donko is somebody who has played well even when injured. And I feel like that's something I didn't see in the second half against Ohio State. So
Yeah.
the other problem is TJ Shanahan on the interior is a fine offensive lineman. I think he's going to be where if he were to stay here, and okay, so none of that matters anymore. I just realized Chuck Losey's probably leaving as well. But like theoretically, if he were to go through Penn State's strength program, I think he's going to be a quality offensive lineman at some point in his career, but it's not right now. Athletically, strength, movement skills, like he's just not there, and he's not supposed to be because he wasn't supposed to be the starter. It's supposed to be Anthony Donko or Cooper Cousins, and that hasn't happened. So the moves I think have set a floor, but I don't think they've done anything to change the ceiling for this offensive line. Theoretically, yes, Donko at tackle, we've seen the best of him there, but I don't know that it really changes anything for this game. Maybe it does going forward. Maybe Anthony Donko can shove some guys around and really kind of get back to who he was at the end of the season, but for this game, I don't think so. I do think that it is interesting and worth going to look at. Is there more tinkering going on up front? Are they going to try Cooper Cousins? And how does all of that work out? It's worth a question of like, you know, what's holding him back? I feel like I know what it is, but I would like to hear maybe somebody dig into that a little bit more when we talk about the offensive line. Maybe it's something we'll ask tonight.
There you go. You figured out your question, and you can watch the video of T. Frank asking a question and everybody else, the media on hand of Terry Smith right here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Right around 7 o'clock tonight, that should be live, maybe a little bit sooner, depending on how the time works out there at Haluba Hall. But, all right, any other thoughts on practice, T. Frank? What are you looking for tonight, or is that pretty much covered a lot of it?
Well, you know, I always do the offensive side. Fitz does the defensive side. So he'll be looking out for some other stuff. I'm sure there's availabilities and players and Alex Tash and all those things. So that's always, I'm almost completely blind to the defensive side of the ball, other than the 1 week where I was able to go over and check those things out. I think that they need to, I do think that the work against double teams helped. So during the bye week, they were working on fighting through double teams on the defensive line. They were working on block shedding and contact at the point of contact with offensive linemen for the linebackers. I did see an improvement there, especially with the defensive linemen. There was significantly less ass kicking up front, and that is I think that's a massive improvement. That I think speaks to what Terry Smith has re-engineered about prioritizing certain aspects of practice. Now, again, I'm not over there, but I've been over there in the past, and I never saw them working on those things. They were typically working on pass rush in those situations when we're at practice. Again, it doesn't mean they're not working on it later, but we just generally knowing the kind of flow of what practice is overall, we're there at the beginning. And if you want to work on something, you put it first, right? You want to make sure you have the most energy, focus, discipline, and attention, so it goes first. And for them to put run stuff first in the first, like during the bye week, I think that was intentional, and I do think it helped. And we'll have to see. Ohio State's offensive line is pretty good, right? I don't think that they were world beaters on the ground. They weren't overly aggressive maulers. You might get a little more of that this week. Indiana's offensive line is pretty good. So it'll be a test to see if that was just a 1 week thing or if there's a different level that they've reached when it comes to run defense. That would change a lot for this defense if that were the case.
Yeah, it would. And it's one of those situations where I'm going to have to see it to believe it. But to the point you just made, it would change a lot for this group if it was able to be better in an area it struggled pretty much for a good chunk of the season, and certainly amid this 5-game losing streak. But if you want to be at Beaver Stadium and see if the Penn State run defense is better, or see if Kobe Howard plays more, or see if Ethan Grunkemeyer in this passing attack can get going with your own two eyes, there's no better place to find tickets to Penn State, Indiana than Game Time, gametime.co. If you want to be at Beaver Stadium for Penn State, Indiana, you can get in for as low as $24. And if you want to sit right behind the Penn State bench, maybe catch Ryan Snyder out walking the crowd before the game, say hello to him, you can do that for $124. And those fees, remember,
Not
everyone,
bad.
include all your fees. So you're not going to be surprised at checkout. You are not going to get to that point of thinking, wow, I got a great deal, and then get to the point where you have to pay and say, oh, actually, I didn't get a good deal. Nope.
I hate that.
Yeah, me too.
I hate that so much.
Me too, yes. Game Times gives you the fees all up front so you don't get surprised at checkout. You can use promo code ON3, new customers can, for checkout, $20 off your first purchase. I love the Game Time app. I was just looking at it for some Eagles tickets for later this year. Didn't pull the proverbial trigger on that yet, but might soon, T. Frank. It's weird. I'm not used to looking ahead to December and being able to plan things in a way that does not include Penn State playing in the postseason. Of course, they can still make the bowl game, lower bowl games with 3 wins in their next 4 games, but still, that's a little bit odd to me. Anyway, whether you want to see Penn State, Indiana, or your favorite pro teams, another college team, college basketball is now underway. Take the guesswork out of buying college football and really tickets to any sports with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code ON3, that is ON3, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code ON3 on3 for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. T. Frank, one thing I want to bring up to you that's not on the rundown, but we have free reign to pivot here on the November 5 edition of the BWI Live Show.
I love it.
With 4 games to go, we are now at a point where Penn State will continue, as it has, to manage roster situations for its freshman players at this point. But
yeah,
are you interested in looking tonight and seeing if maybe any of those guys are in their uniform who weren't before, based on the fact that now that there's 4 games to go? Anyone that has not played yet this year can, in theory, play in all 4 and still preserve a red shirt.
It's a great point. I think, I think this is the point now you can make that conversation, because before I was really struggling with, is it better to put out film that maybe isn't great, or is it better to just rest on, hey, I was a 4-star recruit and I have all these relationships with other schools, and
right.
So like you'll probably have an agent or somebody who's working the phones and being like, hey, blah, 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 or having your practice film or whatever it might be. At this point, there's no downside for the player specifically. And if the coaches want to do that for whatever reason it might be, of giving those players an opportunity, or they think genuinely they can help the team, there's no gray area anymore, because if you can play, you can play, and you can still preserve your red shirt. So, I think that is a conversation for the next 3 games specifically, but that we begin to see that this week. I don't think that there are any young players that are going to help Penn State this week against Indiana, but you talk about Nebraska and Michigan State and some of those Rutgers. I think that could be definitely a conversation.
All right. Well, something to keep in mind here as the rest of the season unfolds. I know everyone wants to see more of Kobe Howard. He's the freshman, obviously, that everyone wants to keep talking about. But keep in mind, LeVar Arrington has played on kick return coverage the last 2 weeks. He looks like a guy who is not ready for the full brunt of playing linebacker yet, but I'm kind of curious as well, as they continue to try and create depth there, with Alec Tash being the freshman who has received opportunity so far, if maybe LeVar Arrington is not somehow part of that equation. Again, he looks a little thin to me, T. Frank, to be a huge part of the equation, but we're certainly at the point of anything is worth trying if you're going to burn someone's red shirt.
I have to say I was impressed with his development that I saw during the bye week, because I haven't seen him since the summer and spring practice, where he didn't know positional discipline whatsoever. He didn't know where to put his hands. He didn't know how to strike. He didn't know how to read, any of those things. And like watching him go through some of those block destruction drills, he looked good. Like he looked like he knew what he was doing. He's got such long arms that it looks right. It's effective when he hits the bag. But a little bit undersized, and that positional fundamental stuff is half of what you need to know when it comes to being a linebacker, because the other half is what's the offense doing and how do I react to it. And that's an entirely different, way deep rabbit hole for him to get into. So from that perspective, like he played edge rusher in high school, and he did not seem to have the Tony Rojas adoption curve to linebacker. So I think that I'm not looking for that. I agree. But I do think there's been progress. And I just wanted to say that for fans, I want to know where LeVar is. That, yes, physically talented, getting better at linebacker, but I think that it was going to be a big uphill battle for him physically and mentally to play the position, as opposed to just be an athlete and go out there and be a freak. Because he's not 240 pounds like Abdul Carter when he got here.
Right, exactly. So anyway, just a random aside there. It's time to get into this week's edition of Best Bets. All right, if you haven't signed up yet for BetMGM, use bonus code ON3 and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code ON3. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets. If your bet loses, just make sure you use bonus code ON3 when you sign up. Make this college football season one for the history books. Make it legendary. Hope you made your baseball season legendary by following along with our Dodgers weekly, it felt like, bets to win the World Series. That worked out well. Heck of a Game 7 to listen to on the way home from Penn State, Ohio State. We did have both teams scoring more than 10 points last week go in our favor, so it's been a good run here after a little bit of a tough run, T. Frank, that we had there in late September, early October.
We recalibrated our expectations for Penn State, and I feel like that really set us off. Like, don't expect a lot from this team, and then you'll be rewarded.
Yes, exactly. So, anyway, the first one I got tonight, it's Ball State laying 2.5, so minus 2.5 points against Kent State. I think Kent State, and they just made their interim head coach their full-time head coach, and I think that they are a program that is much better than I think most people anticipated them being. Still don't think they're ready to go on the road for Maction. Love Maction, by the way. If everyone loves Maction, I assume that's why they're here, or at least partially why they're here. And I just think this is a good spot for Ball State to win handily by at least a field goal. I thought this line would be over 3, so I am going to take it at 2.5. Does it feel a little bit like a trap potentially? Yeah, maybe a little bit. But I like this one. I just don't. If Kent State either stays within a field goal on the road or beats me outright, T. Frank, then I will just have to live with that on Wednesday night after Terry Smith's interview and practice wraps up.
Yeah, I don't know anything about Maction this year. They're an ESPN product, right? So that's going to be something that you gotta manage that, navigate that if you're going to be like Michael
everyone.
Higgins.
How about no one has an issue with Big Noon this week, huh? There's no complaining about Big Noon this week on Fox. Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. We don't need to get into a TV rights and.
Can I rant one quick rant? Quick rant. It's not my job to negotiate for you. I hate this every single year. This is what they do this intentionally, by the way, where they set up these deals to end right before the start of football season, or in this situation, right before the start of like the college football playoff section where you've got the rankings and then the playoff, right? So they set these up for these high leverage negotiations so that one or the other can then go to us and go, hey, they're not doing it right. Be adults, fix this yourself.
Right.
And yes, I'll say, like, I appreciate the way that YouTube TV said we didn't want Disney to gouge you, so we didn't agree to the terms, because they're going to have to up the price of YouTube TV if they just give in to the hostage negotiation that Disney has set up by the timing of these things. And here's the thing, like, YouTube TV is going to get blamed, but this is on Disney because they wanted to hike up the rates again. So, like, stop it. Stop using us as your leverage tool. Be adults and do this like everybody else in corporate America. Have some sort of monopolistic scheme where you both agree together to screw us over, but at least you don't make us feel bad about it. The end.
All right. I like it. Very passionate. Mr.
Greg, you are the
chat.
you are the best at reacting to my rants because you just don't care.
I do care. I always care, T. Frank. He asked if UMass joined the MAC. Yeah, UMass is a new MAC member as of July 1st, I believe, of 2025.
How long were they independent?
Quite a long time. Yeah, I don't have their full past record season in front of me, but definitely quite a bit of time. Anyway, back to best bets. game, again, that you can watch, whether you have YouTube TV or not, will be Penn State, Indiana this weekend, noon Eastern time on Fox. I kind of had to laugh a little bit. Like when this kickoff time came out, we were driving back across Columbus. We were somewhere probably just past West Virginia. You know, I'm assuming Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson were on a private plane to wherever it is they live or were headed next after that game, and thought, man, at least those guys are flying somewhere privately, I would assume, when they learn that they have to watch Penn State again this weekend. Because the other option for them on big noon kickoff was Oregon, Iowa, which I was really surprised, quite frankly, that that was not the pick for big noon. But all of you Penn State fans that are here watching along with us certainly are coveted by the Fox decision makers. And so Indiana has been a pretty good ratings team this year as well. So you get it on big noon. My best bet for BetMGM with this game, T. Frank, is I'm going to take the Indiana team total over 31.5 points. I was looking at the spread, and like I said earlier in the show, it definitely interests me. But just based on and I know that Indiana does have some injuries, at various parts of its offense, but just the way Penn State's defense has been giving up points, and just the way this Indiana offense has a way of scoring points. Yeah. Like, could you always fear that when you're laying more than 2 touchdowns, especially with a road team, that the back door's open and that the home team is going to find a way, whether it's because the backups are in the fourth quarter or whatever it might be, to score late and make it less of a blowout than what it looked like it was going to be. But the fact that this 31.5 point team total for Indiana, I just need Indiana to do what I expect it to do. And I would be shocked if it doesn't score at least 7 touchdowns in this game, just based on what we've seen from that offense so far this year and what we've seen from the Penn State defense. I guess if nothing else, the only way I can see this one going poorly, T. Frank, is if this becomes a possession, ball control kind of a game where Indiana plays at Penn State speed and we get a lot of like 7, 8, 9, 10-minute drives.
Yeah, and now that I'm thinking about it, and you kind of jarred me into this line of thinking, because when you watch a team, like it's the latest thing you've seen, and I've been spending a good bit of time this week watching Indiana and all their success. There is a reality where Penn State's secondary wakes up after being embarrassed by the Ohio State receivers and doesn't do what they did last week. The other thing is they don't play the same style, right? So these guys are more break tackles and get yak on RPOs, which we'll get to here in just a second. I don't know that that's something... We've seen A.J. Harris struggle in some of those situations in one-on-ones, but generally, Davian Collins is a good tackler. King Mack has struggled at tackling. Like, that's an avenue where the safeties miss tackles, but the corners have been generally okay if you put them in one-on-one situations. I don't think that they'll stop the completions, but I do think that they can stop the explosive plays generated with free and extra yards on broken tackles. That's the biggest danger here. And I could see Penn State fighting there, maybe giving up some, but not giving up 66 points like Illinois or 56 like Maryland, because they have a little more pride and a little more talent in the secondary. But it will all depend on how wide open those RPO windows are. And so I'm getting too much into the film breakdown. Yeah, I think that it's like 31.5. Like, I'm now hedging my bets a little bit in my brain as whether or not they're going to get the over.
Okay, I like it. I'm with you. I can certainly see where you're coming from with that. Again, if this game is slow paced and Penn State, if it can stay on the field on offense, has an ability to grind a game down and really, run the clock, so to speak. And Indiana, of course, is coming to Beaver Stadium ahead of a big November stretch run that it hopes is going to position itself to possibly be in the Big Ten title game and certainly the college football playoff. So do they want style points? Yes. Are they capable of winning with style points? Yes. And so that's why I lean on this over 31.5. Penn State's given up just way too many points this year to teams that have less efficient offenses in this one.
Yeah, and you mentioned the point here that shook me out of that. It's the Penn State offense against its defense. I think I'm not expecting a ton of turnovers necessarily, but I'm expecting a lot of 3-and-outs. And so that'll give Indiana a ton of opportunity, ton of extra drives to get that spark going.
Right. All right, last one on the list in this week's best bets from BetMGM. T. Frank, I am taking LSU plus 10 at Alabama.
Oh.
The old fire the coach, rally the the guys and go on the road and stay within the number. I think Alabama's a really good football team, but we've seen them on the ropes previously this year, and I think that LSU obviously has a ton of talent, and maybe those guys just needed the shake-up with Brian Kelly being fired to play to their potential. But I'd be surprised if this game, Alabama could still win by a touchdown, of course, but I would be surprised if this game gets beyond double digits. So I'm going to take LSU plus 10. And I believe that is a night game. I should know that. I should put the times on the rundown, but we'll keep getting better 1 week at a time. But anyway, I like LSU plus 10 T-Frank to close things out.
All right, I like it. That one also has the opportunity for like a backdoor cover, right? Yes. Late in the game, something fluky happens in that game.
All right, that is best bets from BetMGM.
See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, and 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer now for new customers only. Subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are not withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days. In partnership with Kansas Crossings Casino and Hotel.
Alrighty, that was best bets from BetMGM. That's Thomas Frank Carr. I'm Greg Pickle from BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Thanks for being with us here on this Wednesday edition of BWI Live as Penn State continues marching forward toward its game with Indiana on Saturday, big noon kickoff on Fox. It's time now to get into another Wednesday staple here on the BWI Live Show, and that is the stock report. You want to start positive or negative, T. Frank? Your call.
Yeah, let's start with stock up. Yeah, let's start positive, and then we'll end with stock down. And I think we should, now that I think about it, we should start with stock up from now on with our new imaging because there's a payoff with the stock down.
All right, so if you're watching on YouTube, you can check that out now. Brand new imaging for this week's Stock Up, Stock Down segment from T. Frank. Stock Up, number 3 on the list. I will eventually get to the point where I can navigate my computer here fast enough to do this. Is somebody on the defensive side of the ball for you, T. Frank. Number 3 on your Stock Up list.
Yeah, Alex Tash got in the game. They finally broke the seal and put in a young linebacker in a rotational role. He played the will, and I thought he did okay. Like, watching him be in position was a big thing, right? And making sure that he knew where to be for the most part. I thought he had a good drop where he took away a deeper route, and then he was just a little bit slow to get down into the flat to take away the underneath route, but still was able to get there. I think he rallied for a play. There was just a lack of confidence, in his movements. There was a lack of physicality, a lack of explosiveness in the run game because he's still learning. And you see that, show up in the way you take on blocks. You got the right shoulder taking on the right block. You're in your gap, but you're not the one dictating the action. And so I wanted to give him credit for, being a freshman, being thrown out there and being in the right spot. So Alex Tash, a mild bump, stock up. I think you're going to get to see a little bit more of him. And I don't think he did anything on Saturday that I noticed that was obvious where he was out of position or maybe lost trust with the coaching staff. It's going to be more about getting him comfortable and confident in his second start to get some more size and physicality out there, because that is what he needs to bring, right? He's 227, 228. He's a bigger dude, and he needs to bring some of that wood. You need to lay the wood on a blocker or a lineman or a running back to really pay all that off as kind of a young and upcoming linebacker.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I struggled with putting together the stock up portion of today's show. Stock down was a lot easier. But I started my stock up number 3 with Penn State quarterback Ethan Grunkemeyer. No, he was not great at Ohio State, but I have been impressed with the poise he showed, T. Frank. And the moment does not seem to be too big for him. Is the passing he's doing always accurate? No. Is he getting as much help as he possibly could from his teammates? No. Is Andy Kotelnicki putting him in the best spots for him and his offense to thrive? Probably not. But when aside from all that stuff, certainly I think Ethan Grunkemeyer has done at least what you would expect, if not a little bit more, from a redshirt freshman making his first 2 starts on the road at Iowa and at Ohio State. I'm sure everyone's dream as a college football player is to become the starter, but it is a nightmare to do it at Iowa and at Ohio State. So he is stock up just for me because, again, I don't think he's more of a stock up because his stock's not down, if that makes sense. And I think that's about what Penn State could ask for.
I've said way too much this week already about Ethan Grunkmeyer. I've blown the passing discussion out of proportion this week just with my philosophical views of how you treat the quarterback. The only reason I didn't put him on my list is because I didn't feel like the offensive staff trusted him to throw the football. I thought he did well, but like I don't know that I can have a stock up when half of your throws are screens or zero decision passes. So yeah. I wanted to put him there. I'm glad you did.
Alrighty, let's move on now to number 2.
Number 2.
Who you got, T. Frank?
Andrew Rappelier. There's a little bit of a cause and effect here of we saw less of Luke Reynolds, and I think part of that was because of what I just talked about with the game plan. You want your blocking tight end out there if you're going to be throwing a lot of screens, if you're going to be doing a lot of stuff outside, pin and pull, run game stuff with the running backs, and then trying to get them in space. So you had more Rappelier, and that de-emphasized Luke Reynolds. But I thought Rapp, when he was out there, did well, caught the ball. Yeah. And was a good blocker. So stock up there. I think that's going to be part of the game plan again. Like if you're de-emphasizing the passing game, Andrew Rappelier is going to have stock up, and I expect more of that this week.
All right, interesting. We can also maybe check that out at practice tonight too, see what they have him doing. Speaking of things you'll look for tonight, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but the construction of the Penn State offensive line has continued to, I don't want to say change, but morph as the season goes on, both for injuries and performance reasons. So my stock up is Anthony Donko. Penn State put him back at right tackle. Was he perfect? I don't think so. Was anyone perfect at Ohio State? No. But do I think that's the right spot for him at this point? Yes, I do.
Yeah. He played better, too.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought he played one of his better games, if not the best game of the year, back at right tackle. So stock up for me. Again, I'm not telling anyone anything they don't know, but it's not the easiest list to put together at this point, coming off of a loss at Iowa, a bye week, and a loss at Ohio State that continued a 5-game losing skid.
Yeah, and we're going to get to number 1 here, and I'm going to spoiler alert it for you. It's not Kobe Howard or Tyseer Denmark, which means that we're now part of the conspiracy. That's right. We're now part of the people.
Number 1.
Sorry, T. Frank, I jumped the gun there for a second.
All good.
Yeah, not Kobe Howard, not Tyseer Denmark. If we were doing a stock up of guys who are being asked about more in press conferences, they would be far and away number 1. And certainly guys that are talked about on the Blue White Illustrated message board inside the Lions Den forum, but also here on YouTube and in the comment section, it'd be those guys. But who you got number 1 stock up for Penn State this week, T. Frank?
Yeah, it's the guy that we both have. It's Chaz Coleman. He had 11 pass rushes and 4 pressures, that's really good. Like you're almost at a 40% clip in terms of getting pressure on the quarterback. That's impact for. I'm sorry. No, I was looking at the wrong situation. Yeah, I was looking at week 1, not week 10. He had 3 pressures and 2 quarterback hits. That makes way more sense on 10 pressures. So 30% pressure rate. 2 of those were hits, quality pass rushes where he got into the backfield and made an impact on one of them for a throwaway. Yeah, really good. Still limited sample size. Not like he's out there every single play, but he is. When he does, he's making an impact again now that he's back to full strength. Assuming that's all that stuff that happened earlier in the year he's recovered from.
Yeah, Terry Smith telling us, 2 weeks ago now maybe, that Chaz Coleman was sick there for a little bit in October, which ended up being something he had to work his way back to the field. Then at Iowa, they thought Ivan Kamaju was a better fit for facing that Iowa offense, which certainly makes sense because he's a little bit bigger. But Chaz Coleman in a pass rushing situation at Ohio State played very well. T. Frank, I think, is easy of a number 1 stock up pick as you could possibly ask for at this point of the year.
Yeah, legitimately great stuff when he was out there, just not out there a whole lot because, again, pass rushing specialist. He's not a guy that has done exceptional work against the run for the most part, although I don't think it was as bad as it could have been. It's more missed tackles, I think, is his problem.
Yeah, I was trying to think of maybe some just missed guys that we could put on this list. I don't really have any. I don't know if you do, but I'll give you that opportunity before we, a guy like Zachy Wheatley is playing as good a football as anyone. I don't think he counts to be on this list, quite honestly, because his stock's been up all year. But he is worth noting as a guy who has played well. Katron Allen, I put him in the same boat. Like, he's a guy whose stock has been about as high as anybody else's all year long. So just a little bit of thought behind the rationale, I guess. But you ready for stock down?
Yes, I am ready for stock down.
Alrighty. Stock down, Penn State. I'm curious to see. Oh, okay. I see how that worked. I was wondering what this was going to look like here, and you nailed it, as you always do. So a new graphic there if you're watching on YouTube.
Spare no expense in our graphic design. It is absolutely top-notch, and we have all the best tools to create.
If you happen to be listening on the podcast, I highly, highly recommend you go to about the 44:30 mark of the YouTube video at Blue White Illustrated on YouTube and check that out. It's good work by T. Frank. Good stuff. Number 3, we're going to give you 3. We gave you 3 stock ups. Now we'll give you 3 stock down candidates.
Number 3.
I'm actually going to change my number 3 to your number 3, so we are on the same page here, T. Frank, and it is Penn State offensive lineman Nolan Ruggie.
Yeah, that's pretty. I guess this is the problem. Is like the stock down is a little bit boring because it's just the inverse of the stock up of like Nolan Ruggie got benched. So
right.
That's there's little to say other than he was not performing particularly well in pass protection, and also he didn't play in that game.
Right. So, I mean, I think that he did come in late, I believe, when Drew Shelton went out. So I do think that maybe he did see a few snaps. But, yeah, by and large, T. Frank, he was an afterthought for the offense. I don't believe he was hurt. Like, I don't think there was any injury issues to speak of for him. I just think that Penn State decided its best path forward along the offensive line was to make a change. So, yeah, he is an easy stock-up candidate. Let's move on to number 2.
Number 2.
So Blake in the chat says deny Dennis Sutton stock down. He was my number 2 on this list. And like I have a love-hate relationship with putting him here because I think that there are just times when he is like, you think back to the missed sack with him and Keon Wiley at Ohio State that eventually led to Ohio State points. And you just think it's hard not to think to yourself, that's a play he makes last year. And also that's the play this Penn State defense needs. Like, I don't necessarily buy as much as they're trying to sell this whole idea of they're close and that there's a play here and a play there and not finishing and so on and so forth. But if you do want to believe that, like plays like that, finishing a play like that changes the game, changes the outcome of things. And maybe it only changes it for a couple more drives. But certainly if Penn State gets a stop there on 3rd and 12 and doesn't give up a first down that eventually leads to a touchdown, are you talking about a different game? Maybe, maybe not, but you have to give yourself a chance to talk about a different game. Unfortunately, Denai and this defensive line have not given Penn State a lot of opportunities over the last handful of weeks to change the narrative at this point.
Here's my problem is I don't think Denai is playing badly, and there was just there's an unrealistic expectation for what he is and how he would play this year, and that has been the perceived stock down. I think there's also, and I talked about this on Monday, there's this perception that he wasn't playing hard because somebody put out a viral clip of him getting, sorry, I'm going to get into the X's and O's for a second because this really bothers me. Dennis Sutton was supposed to be in the C gap on this viral clip where he gets inside and he gets jacked up by the tackle, right? And so then they give up a touchdown on a 1-yard run, and it looks like he's not playing hard because he got pushed off the spot. He won his original gap. He long-armed the tackle and then was working back into the actual point of attack where there was a fullback coming through. The linebacker and the safety were late to fill, so he's there as the only person that's going to stop that. But yes, Dennis Sutton is 6'5", and he plays like he's 6'8". He's a tall player that does not play with great leverage, and so in that situation, it looks like he wasn't trying hard because he got pushed off the spot, even though he won the block and was just working back into being in the play. This idea that players aren't playing hard, like you don't know what they're doing for the most part, and then you just see what you want to see there. The reality here is Dennis Sutton is just performing to his level of expectation. You talk about like that pass rush and how he didn't close on it. Yeah, because Denai doesn't turn well. It's right. Like these are the realities of what he's been since he was a 5-star prospect in high school. We talked about this on this channel and at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com for 5 years now. And it's not. Here's the thing: is like it sounds like I'm insulting him, and I'm trying to defend him. I'm trying to say, like, this is his skill set, and he is performing to expectation. Now, he has higher expectations for himself, and I respect that, and he wanted to be the best defensive end in college football. I wanted him to have the opportunity as an individual to go and achieve those things.
Yeah.
But it was going to be very hard for him to do that with his skill set, and we are seeing the results of that. So this is not, and I'm not saying the stock down is wrong here or anything, because it is the perception of the stock, but he's playing exactly the same way he did last year. Like, there's very little difference.
Right. Your list continues here with, I am not going to be able to find it, Keon Wiley is your stock down number 2.
Yeah, so we got to see him an extended period of time, got to see him in coverage, and we got to see his instincts, and there's a reason he hasn't been on the field. Like, struggled in coverage, struggled with knowing when to trigger downhill and attack in the run game. He did some good things. Like, he was a stout run defender at times, but overall, at that Sam position, it became clear to me, like, watching him react to things out on the field where he's pointing directly to his guy in man coverage and being like, this is my guy, I got him, and then he loses him immediately after the snap because the guy fakes blocking for like a beat. And so those are the things for a guy who's a redshirt junior that you shouldn't have, and why I think he struggled to see the field, especially that will position, which has a larger coverage responsibility by far. It is one of the most important coverage positions on the defense from the interior perspective, and if he's not able to handle those things at select stuff at the Sam, it's just information. For me, it's just information calibrating where he is, but he is, to me, the perception stock down at number 2.
Yeah. Cypher Carbon in the chat says, got to see why Keon Wiley wasn't being put in. And if I can soapbox for just a second here, like, I think we keep forgetting that in the Kobe Howard, Tyser Denmark conversation. Like, on one hand, you say to yourself, how could it be any worse? And then on the other hand, if you get guys extended reps, they might show you how it can be worse. Like, that just is the reality of the situation. And the coaching staff has to weigh that possibility versus the possibility that who is out there is also not getting the job done.
Yeah. I just want to, I got to keep saying this, and it's not going to get me any points with the internet, and I don't care, but I care, like, the truth and the perception of the matter. The Penn State coaching staff are not morons. So they are losing. They're on an 0-5 streak. The head coach is fired. This season is toast. The snowball has turned into an avalanche, and they're all caught up in it. But most of them have had a stellar track record and deserve to be in the position that they're in. And things can go sideways fast. They are not playing players because they're stupid and or politics. Like, they have more information than we do. And if I could summarize, I think, Nate's point over the last couple of weeks, even when I've gotten heated about the passing game, and I want to give credit to this point, that's why I'm bringing it up. They have more information about Ethan Grunkmeyer than I do. They have more information about their passing game than we do. And so, yes, I think there is a fair conversation about Kobe Howard playing more and being more explosive and accentuating the things he can do instead of being worried about the things he can't do.
Right.
But they aren't operating from a place of the same information as us. And so there is this perception, because of the losses and because of the same problems over and over and over and over again, that they aren't doing anything to fix those problems. Sometimes the problems are not fixable, and they know why they're not fixable. So we can't just say that, like, everyone who isn't playing is great, like a Keon Wiley, because we don't have the counterfactual, which is how these things. I've been joking with Cypher Carbon about, like, we don't believe in conspiracy theories here, because conspiracy theories are just a lack of information, and then imagination fills the gap. And there is just a lack of information, and that's the end of the story, which is absolutely frustrating, right? This is why everyone wants to be at practice every single day, so that you know everything, but we don't. And that's where interpretation and all these things can kind of get into the mix.
Right, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I just feel very strongly that a group of people who have mostly, I'm not sure any of these guys have ever lost 5 games in a row. I mean, I'm not going back to, obviously, some of them may have as players at some point, or some did it at some other schools. But point being, I refuse to believe that they're sitting there saying to themselves, this guy, he might be able to get us out of this 5-game rut that none of us have ever been in our lives, but Sorry, we're not trying. We're not playing him. Like I don't
Yeah.
think that's the rationale that they're working with. But
Yeah, and
anyway,
and,
yeah.
Yeah, that whole thing, just one last thing, is like, I just don't think that they want to throw the ball. And so Kobe Howard is less important when they
Right.
don't want to throw the ball. Tyser
Right.
Denmark is less important when they don't want to throw the ball, which is where I think they are with their starting quarterback. Based on the last game plan, that's my read of the situation.
All right, let's get to number 1 stock down of the week.
Number 1.
All right. Number 1 on the list for both of us this week, T. Frank, Zion Tracy. Could have just been the secondary in general. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
We don't need to pick on just Zion Tracy. We can just throw the whole secondary on the table here. It was ugly for Penn State at Ohio State. And I know you mentioned earlier in the show maybe they bounce back this week. Maybe they do. You could certainly be right. But
Yeah.
that was hard to watch. And this maybe, Indiana's not bringing Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate to Beaver Stadium this weekend, but they're still bringing a functioning passing offense that I think can pose Penn State plenty of problems.
Yeah, there was no reason for those plays to happen, and Zion Tracy's was just the worst example of it, where you had a guy who was the cover 2 safety and gave up a touchdown by letting a guy get behind him, and it's just it's the poster child of what happened in that game, where they didn't respect the deep speed of those receivers and they paid for it, and that goes against across the entire cornerback room. But you're right, like Zion Tracy is just the example, because I didn't want to go all 3 corners on the list.
Right. And you certainly would have been well within your right to do so based on the way things played out. Yeah, it was just not. It was not pretty, T. Frank. I don't know how else to say it. It was not pretty. Everyone watched it. There's no reason to beat a dead horse on this one. It was not good. Easy stock down, number 1 of the week. And we'll see. Can they bounce back? They're not getting a lot of help from the pass rush, which has not bounced back this year for the most part. So time will tell. But the Penn State defense, I think you said it earlier today, or maybe it was yesterday. I can't remember. But sometimes things aren't just, fixable. And there's some things with this defense that just don't appear to be fixable right now.
Yeah, and it is also matchup dependent, and that might be a good transition into this game and what what we've seen from Indiana so far this week.
Yeah, I'm glad we talked about them earlier in the show, because we're running out of time to talk about them now. But I mean, look, we'll dive right into it. Final few minutes of the show. Penn State, Indiana, again set for noon on Fox. Gus Johnson, Joel Klatt, Jenny Taft will be on the call for one of the Big Ten's media rights partners. And T. Frank, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. This is a really, really talented Indiana team. People kept asking this year who was going to be the Indiana of the year, and guess what? Mm-hmm. It's Indiana.
It's Indiana,
Yeah, so Penn State will have its hands full trying to keep this game competitive. Just go ahead. I'm going to let you just run with it from here. We talked about it earlier, but this defense is nasty. This offense is the highest scoring points per game offense in the country. The quarterback is number 2 in the country in terms of passing touchdowns at this point. They can run the ball. They can do a little bit of everything, and they would seemingly have an answer. I think one of the things I wrote in the matchups piece that will run at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com later this week is that the problem to me, T. Frank, is that they have a whole heck of a lot of strengths. Penn State has a whole heck of a lot of weaknesses, and Indiana's going to be able to pick and choose which strengths it wants to rely on.
Yeah. So I want to throw a couple of things at you here, as far as just because we don't have a ton of time, and these are descriptive of the situation with what Indiana likes to do. The way I phrased it in the article I wrote yesterday is like, this is Penn State. Penn State fans are going to get a chance to see what it's like to be on the other side of a Manny Diaz defense. And, Curt Cignetti, I'm sure, developed his style and his plans independently, but they are a similar style. They are similar in terms of attacking and chaotic sort of aggression with the front 7. So usually, if you have a defense, you have to pick fronts or coverage, right? You can't have complexity everywhere in everything unless you're in the NFL. You need to have at least one, what's the theme of your defense? And the front is absolutely the theme of the defense for Indiana. So I went and I looked at where they rank in terms of pressure and a lot of these chaos stats is what I would call them. Percentages of blitzing, stunts, run blitzing, things like that. So because I was reminded so much of Manny Diaz, I threw Duke 2025 into the mix. So 19 teams all Big Ten teams plus Manny Diaz. Indiana ranks first in blitzing, first in stunts, first in pass blitzing, first in simulated pressure, meaning you're blitzing a linebacker and dropping a defensive lineman. Pass stunts, first. Run blitz, fourth. Major failure there. And then run stunts, first. So they do not sit still. They are moving. And again, these are higher rates than what Manny Diaz even has done this year. And I think most of these are higher than what he did at Penn State during his time, from 22 through 23, 24. I don't know how Penn State contends with this because this is going to confuse an offensive line that struggled with communication this year, and you've got a young quarterback who has shown a little bit of a flinch towards pressure, blitzes, things coming at him from places he's not expecting. That is everything about this defense. Is they don't sit still, and they line up even outside of this. They line up in the oddest defensive structures I've ever seen, where you'd have all 4 defensive linemen on one side of the ball and 3 linebackers on the other side of the ball, and what do you do with that? From a pressure standpoint, from a running standpoint, they will overload, they will stunt, they will twist, they will do everything they can to get free runners at the quarterback, which they lead the Big Ten by 12. So not only do they have all these pressure things, it's effective, and this is what we're talking about when it's more than the sum of the parts. I don't think they have anybody that's going to win a lot of one-on-one battles with Penn State's offensive line, truthfully. But what they do have is the ability to get guys free regularly. They get pressure, and they get quick pressure, and it's just scot-free to the quarterback. I don't know how you contend with that in this particular game. That's going to be a huge problem for the Penn State offense. And the thing they give you, by the way, the risk is that if you can block up that pressure, you can throw downfield on this team. If you can find the right leverage and the right route, they will give you the potential for a 45-yard post on the back end. But the likelihood of you getting there because of everything up front is low. So some team might be able to take advantage of that. It's not going to be Penn State. And then quickly, on offense, the thing that I think is really important here is Omar Cooper Jr. We talked about their RPO game. They are known for being an RPO team. Broken tackles are really important to this offense, yards after contact. And I'm just pulling it up here. 17 missed tackles, broken tackles for Omar Cooper Jr. 14 of those have come on RPOs. And what happens is you create a one-on-one, he breaks a tackle, and now it's an explosive play. So the quarterback, and I don't want to take anything from Fernando Mendoza, but he's leading the Big Ten in RPO yardage, and Omar Cooper Jr. is doing a lot of the work for him there. So that's really important. The most important one of their receivers is not the one that's been injured. So if you see him lining up in the slot or you see him in a one-on-one situation, he's number 3. He's the most dangerous player on their offense for what makes their passing attack go, in my opinion. They've got a lot of guys that play well, but he's the thing that is going to create you can't come back from that if he's going to be the guy that does that for Penn State. And then the running game, I think, is pretty good. Offensive line is really good. Left tackle is really good, and I think their tackles in general are good pass. They're good bookends. But Carter Smith is their best offensive lineman, and he's really good. I think he's NFL good. He might be a guard, but he's NFL good.
Yeah, so I think the main takeaway there from T. Frank, or if we talked about, if you caught earlier in this episode, big problem for Penn State this weekend to contend with all the things this Indiana team is capable of doing on offense and defense. It's college football. Anything is possible. The spread's certainly lower than I would have expected it at 2 touchdowns, but at the end of the day, for Penn State to pull off a season-defining upset on Saturday, it is going to need a lot to go right that's not gone right for much of the season, and it will need Indiana to do some things, T. Frank, that it's not done yet this year as well.
Yeah, and I felt like there was a path towards Penn State being in the game where they could contend with Ohio State, and I think that still somebody's going to be able to crack the code on that defense. Yeah. Their run defense is legit. I think that there's some plays to make elsewhere against that defense. This one, somebody's going to be able to run on this team because they are not big up front. Their nose tackle is 305 pounds. He's 6 feet tall. He is going to be, I think, an NFL player as a 3 technique. But this defense does not have dudes up front. Penn State's not the team that's going to maul them and kind of simplify the game, because if you can just blow dudes off the ball, it doesn't matter if they're pinballing between gaps, you'll create some seams. Nobody's been able to do it this year, and I don't think Penn State's offensive line is up to that task. Yeah. But there is an opportunity later in the year for this team to find the end of the road. I just don't think that. we've described them as like this juggernaut, right? And I think for most teams they are, but I don't know that this is a team eventually that's going to be the national champion for that reason. But I think that they're going to get as close as they possibly can because this is an elite team that plays well. They know their assignments, they execute them with violence, and they're going to be very good in every single game. They're going to make it hard to beat them. And so I don't think Penn State really has an opportunity this week to do that. But somebody will.
Somebody will. Somebody will, and somebody else will be back talking Penn State football recruiting tomorrow. That'll be Sean Fitz and Ryan Snyder, of course, with T. Frank on the BWI Live Recruiting Show on Thursday. Don't forget, check back here to the YouTube channel. Tonight, we'll have insight and intel from Terry Smith's post-practice news conference as the Lions inch forward to taking on Indiana on Saturday at noon. A lot of other coverage coming your way this week. Plenty of film breakdown, plenty of recruiting info. What is Penn State going to do with its first home game of November and the first of the James Franklin era from a recruiting standpoint? The guys will have you covered with that. Obviously, the coaching search intel keeps feeding at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, where it is just $1 for the first week to sign up. So join us there. Don't forget, like the video, hit subscribe. I think I got all my talking points out of the way, so that's Thomas Frank Carr. I'm Greg Pickle. We'll catch you next time on BWI Live.